Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Bahati Joyce. It's so good to have you back. So today we are going to be talking about being uncomfortable in my own skin. Skin is a metaphor for nakedness. It's how you came into this world. You know, in your birth suit. The biggest thing I've found, at least from my experience, that I've had to deal with is really acceptance. Why is it a challenge to be ourselves, to be comfortable in our own skin? Acceptance. We want people to accept us, to like us. I believe that when we come into this world, we are packaged. You are already coded with information about who you are. You come as a package. And so the challenge then comes in when we face certain environments and situations that begin to tell us who we should be. And being uncomfortable in our own skin then becomes really an issue of acceptance. Why is it a challenge? Because when these environments, these situations begin to tell us who we should be, then you kind of become uncomfortable to be who you are. That's even if you know who you are. I mean, that's like, honestly, I think most people are still at the place of just discovering themselves. Who I am, does it fit in here? Do I even know what that is? I'm still discovering myself. So if an environment makes me uncomfortable, then I'm not really given the room to discover myself. So the challenge with being uncomfortable in our own skin really starts with when we are introduced to environments and situations that make us uncomfortable with who we are. And sometimes you're still in this place of discovering yourself and the environment isn't really conducive, or who you are isn't really accepted. So it's an issue of acceptance. We all want people to really like us, accept us. I've come to learn that life is really a journey of unlearning. Not really learning, but unlearning. Along that journey, you know, when you came, when you were born, you were you. You were naked. But along the way, you learned a lot of things. And some of those things you learn are not even who you really are. In that journey of self-discovery, you kind of have to find those things that made or make you uncomfortable. I think that's the first step. Find those things that make you uncomfortable. You know why? Because those are the things that begin to point us towards the things that we learned and we need to unlearn. So I'll share a personal example. When I was young, I was bullied. It was way back when I just started primary school. The environment there was rough. So the thing about me growing up as a child, I was very sick, like all the time. I was a bit of a hypochondriac. So I was like this very thin, weak, like, you know, if you laughed too hard, honestly, you were going to blow me away. That was my life. I had to deal with a lot of illness. I had chronic bronchitis. I had life-threatening pneumonia. I had a bunch of other things. My stomach couldn't digest certain foods, so I was on this special diet. There's so much I couldn't eat. It was a very, very confining kind of lifestyle. Because of my condition and how weak I wasn't really able to stand up for myself. What happened is that in my class, there were 3 girls that really used to bully me. The worst part is that one of them was actually a family friend. Our folks knew each other basically. So I never really had the courage to even say anything. And because of the condition I had with my stomach, I couldn't really eat the school food. So my mom would have to actually cook food for me, which was awesome. My sisters would be looking at me get that special treatment. It was nice. The ugly part is that I never even really got to eat any of that food. Can you imagine? I would go to school without food and, sit in my corner, try to have lunch, and these 3 girls would come at me and eat my food. So it was rough. It was a really rough environment for me. Not somewhere for a weakling, you know? What that did to me is that I learned very quickly that you can't be weak. If you're weak, you die. And so I learned to defend myself. I learned that you can't be vulnerable. You can't show this weakness, this weak side. And so vulnerability became a really difficult thing for me to do. And that made me uncomfortable in my own skin. So my turnaround came when I was forced to get into these personal relationships, which happens as you grow. You get into more intimate relationship with friends, personal relationships as well with your significant other. And some of these relationships really forced me to become vulnerable. And that's when I identified like, oh, I'm so uncomfortable with this. And it made me have to backtrack and kind of discover, but why am I so uncomfortable in my own skin? And that's when I realized that, okay, wow. So all my life, I have been just I learned to just be defensive, let me say, but not really to articulate and express myself or have a voice. So I wasn't really comfortable in my own skin, especially when it came to being vulnerable. And it took these relationships to show me that. So I had to learn to find my voice. And the story is not all gloomy because I am who I am today because of what I went through. So now that I've found my voice, I'm at a place whereby I can now begin to understand who I am and who I was meant to be and express that. I relate this story to Africa and the African people. Now, I'm speaking from my perspective as someone who loves my continent, who's passionate about Africa. And I would say that we've kind of been through the same thing. We've been through a lot as a people, and we've been oppressed, bullied, quote unquote. And what that does is that it makes you lose your voice. You struggle to express who you really are. And we've been for so long uncomfortable in our own skin. And that's not just our skin color. That's our culture, our people, our way of thinking, our way of life. For so long, it's been people telling us who we are. And that's what happens when you haven't really found yourself or found your voice. The environment begins to dictate and define who you are. So we as a people, we need to find our voice. Because when you find your voice, you get to define who you are. You get to define who you want to be. And that's where we're heading. So for me, being uncomfortable in your own skin, it's self-discovery. You've just got to find who that person is that you were created to be. That was a bit about my story. I don't know your story. Why don't you share with me what was your journey? We're all so different and there's a lot we can learn from each other. So maybe tell me what makes you uncomfortable in your own skin. What are those things that maybe challenge you in just being who you are, being yourself, being naked? Not in a literal sense, please don't get arrested. But, you know, just being free. So yeah, write on the comments, share some love, subscribe, right here, subscribe. Up until next time, thank you so much for tuning in. You were with the Bahati Joyce.